Hey, ATX, how's everybody doing today? What an incredible episode of television. So powerful, so impactful. First, before we bring everybody out, let's just give it up for that episode. Just incredible. Let's get right into it. Nope, enough about me. I'm Lesley Goldberg, by the way, from The Hollywood Reporter. More importantly, let's bring out the incredible people behind this episode. She wrote the episode. She's a co-executive producer, an amazing human being, and a dear friend of mine, Elisabeth Finch. Camilla Luddington. Kim Raver. And with apologies, showrunner Krista Vernoff was unable to attend today. She's at her daughter's graduation and sends her love and knows the panel is in excellent hands with these three incredible humans.
Thank you.
Let's start just right from the beginning. Elisabeth, where did the genesis of this episode come from?
3 or 4 years ago now, I went to, through the WGA, they sponsored a story tour through the UCLA Santa Monica Rape Crisis Center, which is looked at through the United States as the gold standard for how they treat victims of rape and sexual assault. And it's something that really struck me, and I couldn't sort of shake, and it never quite found its way into the series. And then Dr. Ford gave her testimony at the Kavanaugh hearings, and it destroyed us. It destroyed me, it destroyed Krista, it destroyed pretty much, I don't think there was a woman who wasn't just really rocked by that. And we really collectively felt like the world was getting a message that consent is somehow irrelevant. And we really didn't, we wanted to counter that message, and we wanted to do it as soon as possible. And so Krista turned to me when she was directing an episode of mine and said, we have to do an episode about consent. We have to do it. And then
I had watched the Kavanaugh Ford hearings and heard her testimony, and I was pissed at the reaction, and I rage emailed Krista Vernoff. The backstory of Jo meeting her mom was going to become something completely different. I won't say what in case it happens to another character. But it's going to be completely different. And I went for a walk, actually. I just needed to cool off. And then I was crying, and I was emailing her. And I said, hey, crazy pitch. What if we change the storyline? And what if Jo is a product of rape? And I remember like refreshing my email over and over, and I'm fired. Like, she's gonna hate this pitch. Like, it's done. I'll be yeah. And she wrote back like 5 minutes later, and I just remember her saying, "I love this," in all caps, and I was like, "Yes, we're doing it." And that's kind of how this ended up happening.
Yeah, Kim, when you read the script for this episode, what was your immediate reaction to this and your role in it?
My immediate reaction was very visceral. And then, I just have this incredible gratitude for Finchy and for Krista that I am in a place where I feel as a woman, sorry, this episode is so intense, where we have a voice. And so I just felt, first of all, it's like, oh, thank God I'm in this episode because it's so good. And literally anything that Finchy writes, I'm like, oh, thank God I'm in that one. But it's such an incredible, it's so multi-layered in so many different ways. And to be able to have a voice and be a part of that voice, to be on a show that's running this long, and then for them to find interesting ways to entertain, but yet to be a sort of social activism, I really then am so grateful. So all of these things were flooding in, and then also, I have 2 boys, so I also was so moved that we are, through being an actor, that I get to also feel that we are entertaining and educating simultaneously. So in that episode, like the great scene where they're talking about consent, I just thought, what an incredible way to weave so much in this story. So, and then I also just love that in terms of Teddy, that she's pregnant and that these women are coming together. And I mean, that which is now going to be an iconic scene. And I remember reading it and weeping of the women lining up, because it's so, I feel, we're in a new age where women have each other's backs. And for me, that's what that scene visually is saying. And so that then it's generational too, like Teddy being pregnant with a girl and these women together. And so I was incredibly moved and kind of, I couldn't talk for like a couple hours afterwards.
And I should note that, can everybody hear me?
I got you.
Thank you, sir. Can everybody hear me now? Okay. Yeah. I should note, though, that this episode was written by a woman, directed by a woman, the incredible Debbie Allen,
Incredible Debbie Allen.
showrun by a woman. Obviously, it's created by a woman, Shonda Rhimes, the one and only. Line produced, everything.
Edited,
Edited.
DP'd.
Everything by women.
We had a woman DP,
Yeah.
first AD, and the set of this episode was it was just incredible. I mean, it was an incredibly moving experience to shoot as well.
Yeah. And, you mentioned that this really started from the WGA thing that you went to and the experience that you had. But I also know that Grey's Anatomy is usually not an issue-driven show. That's not to say, obviously, they've touched on so many different things in 15 seasons. And the fact that you guys came at this through story first, and then through an issue first, and then found the way to bring it in to a character, that's not typically how you guys operate, right?
No, but, finding the why now for our characters. I know why now in the world we need a story like this, because they don't exist. You don't have rape kits on television. You don't have conversations about what the impact is of rape and sexual assault. You have someone violated on television. You have people who are abused or thrown down as like corpse number 2, and it becomes about the man who's trying to solve the crime. But it's not, these aren't these conversations that we get to have, but we got to have it here. And it started, yes, with an issue-based thing, but watching Teddy carrying a child, carrying a girl, helping this woman through this, watching Jo find her mom, there was so much character, and finding that and why now for our characters today and what's gonna go on was something that was really important to me.
Let's talk about the rape kit scene. I timed it, it's 2 minutes.
Yep.
I've been covering television for a decade. I've obviously been, a diehard TV fan since I was 12. I've never seen a scene like this on anything. Can you talk a little bit about not just the reasoning for the episode, but how it went over originally with standards and practices?
Yeah, first, the most extraordinary thing, I think, watching it was when we were shooting it, because so many people were saying, I've never seen one before. How does this work? And I remember it just being a really emotional moment of many on the set when they were unpacking everything and telling everybody how it was gonna go and what steps and what order, and everyone saying, I didn't know it was this involved. I didn't know what it was about. And it's
Because we have doctors that were on set that have done them before.
that have done them, and
So they're taking us through it.
yeah, and walking through it, and I had learned from it from the rape treatment center, and I had learned all the steps and done all the research for it. But the reason no one knew the steps is because it's never been shown before in that much detail. We show countless acts against women, and we don't show the caretaking. We don't show what goes into actually doing it. And originally, when we get notes, standards and practices sends us pretty easy standard notes about no side boob, no this,
And those are standard
No
across all
grinding and
television.
across.
sex scenes.
It's not
No
across.
grinding. No grinding.
No grinding.
There's no grinding on Grey's Anatomy.
There's a lot, there's the list, and sometimes they're like silly things, and sometimes there's a little bit, but when we got the list, there were like a bunch of standard, and that's what happens across TV, in network TV. And then there was 2 lines about asking that we didn't show any kind of fluids on the swabs, and then the no fluids on when we do the black light. And that was something that is a medical step and a medical process, and we wanted it on there, and they were concerned about it and didn't want that. And we very, very, very much wanted it. So
I think didn't Shonda respond? They get the notes, and correct me if I'm wrong, and usually acquiesce to some. And Shonda said something like, "It's happening." Like, thank you so much
Thanks
for your notes,
comments. No,
but no. Which, when you're Shonda Rhimes, and it's incredible, and
I respectfully decline.
I
these
respectfully
notes.
decline. I'm going to use that one, but that's. I mean, that was incredible,
Yeah.
and if I think.
But her argument too was that, not to step on you on your question, but like her argument was, we show the violence.
Yes.
But we're showing the medicine, and that was the pushback, and that was what she said, to say, like, well, if you can show this on your network, how come you can't show this? And what happened next?
And what was really amazing is that was heard. And that point got across that what we show on TV and what we find acceptable to show on TV. And so much so that the woman who leads standards and practices ended up in that wall of women. Yeah.
And I think, if I may, I think that's the incredible way to move the needle on hearing women's stories, when you have people who are brave enough, like Finchy and Krista Vernoff, who this story comes up and in the past might be passed upon, right? Like, and those stories don't get heard. But then to have those greenlit to go, and then to have Shonda Rhimes be able to say, I respectfully pass, because it's not an ego-driven thing, but and I'm not speaking for her, but I would imagine that it is, these stories need to be heard. And so that's also, I think, why this is such an important episode, because it's those things like when you go down and you're seeing the fluid on the legs. That's the visceral thing of, oh, this is intense, this is heavy, this is real. And so I think that's the importance also, is that these stories are being told in full, and not from a male gaze, but from a female perspective.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I was obviously reading the tweets after the episode aired, and someone had written saying, my husband, she'd obviously been through a rape kit situation. She'd had a rape kit done. And she said, my husband actually understood for the first time what I went through. And I just found that incredible. Like, now people who know people have been through that understand just a little bit maybe what that was like.
And let's talk about that wall of women, the army of awesome. There's so many words for that. That was just, to me, one of the most powerful scenes I've seen in the past year on television. But talk to me a little bit about where that idea came from for you, Finchy, Elisabeth, and for you guys to film that, and for you to film that, because you were in that scene too.
Let's not talk about that.
We literally, she kept trying to, like, running away. We're like, oh, wait, where did Finchy go? We're like, get her back here. And then she'd be like, they'd be like, roll. She'd be like, we'd be like, what? Get. Very brave.
She's not exaggerating. I fought it 17 ways sideways, and I still am trying to fight it.
No, she was amazing.
If Kim Raver did not exist, I wouldn't, and with her hand on my back going, you're here, and I'm here,
I was like,
and we're just here.
But it's
I would have lost it.
But it's a testament to how incredible this episode is, that Krista fought for you and said, no, you're in this. This is your episode.
Oh yeah, she ganged up on me with Debbie Allen and Linda Klein, who is the our medical savior guru, amazing woman.
She's at the head.
She's at the head of the gurney, because I said, if you're making me go down this hallway, you're coming down with me. But they like forced it. But the hallway was the very first thing that I pictured. My brain, when I write scripts, just works in photographs, about 3 or 5 of them, and then I figure out like how they're strung together and what the narrative is. It's just the way my weirdo brain works. And I saw the hallway of women first, and it was something I just couldn't put down, even though for years I'd been pitching doing the story. And it was because I was at the rape treatment center, and when they were taking us from room to room, they would have radio communication amongst the staff and say, are we clear in the hallway for us to go to the next room, to go to the next room, to go to the next room? And I asked why, and they said it was because there was a patient there who they had just seen who said that she couldn't bear to see anybody else's face right now. And they take such care and treated her as an individual, and that's what she needed. And I thought, okay, that's one of the more powerful things I've heard. But what if it's the opposite? Like, what if safety doesn't come in removing people from situations? What if safety comes in the form of women standing up, lining a hallway, holding space, and just being there and having this woman's back? Some of them not even knowing the story and not needing to know the story, just being there. And that was what stuck from minute one. And then after the table read, every member of the crew women kept asking me, asking Krista, asking you guys, saying, I'd really like to be in this wall. I'll take the day off. I'll take the day off if I have to. And so there are like maybe 5 actors, and the rest were people that were from Shondaland, that were from the writing staff, that were from the crew, wardrobe. All of them are our family. And I really felt compelled to stand up and be there.
And the incredible part of that is, too, that Shonda also had a role in having that come together, because it's not, when you're producing television, you can't just do without a member of the crew who wanted to be a part of that scene. So Shonda, you have to pay to have extra people to come in, which is not something networks and studios often love, but
Right.
Shonda basically said, we're bringing in all these people, it's fine.
They made it happen because our line producer and Krista and Shonda made it all possible, and they brought in a bunch of guys to come in and take over. One of the writers joked that they were guy writers joked that when the scene was being shot, it felt like the Rapture, because he was walking around being like, "Where are all the women?" It just felt like it was like a ghost town over in the writing offices because everybody was gone. But it was really powerful because they kept asking to be a part of it. And it's one thing to say, I'd love to be a part of it. It's another thing for everybody to find a way to make it work so that they can be there and not lose a day's pay, so that they could stand up and be a part of something that they really believed in.
And for you guys, what was it like to film this episode? And we should also note how great were Michelle Forbes and Kalila Joy as guest stars in this episode.
Amazing.
Extraordinary.
They're amazing.
Both sadly unable to be here today, but just incredible. But what was it like for you guys to film with them?
In general, we did a lot of crying in rehearsal.
A lot of hugging, a lot
lot
of
of
crying,
crying.
a lot of breathing.
Yeah, a lot of breathing. There are couples, so when I first read the script, I was like physically shaking through certain parts of it. That was one of the parts, and I really had anxiety and kind of dreaded filming that moment because I just knew it was going to be so powerful, and we are not allowed to cry. And I just wanted to cry the whole time. It was, I knew in that moment, we all knew in that moment that it was something very special. Did I know it was going to be as iconic as it now feels like it is, and the reception from, the episode? I had no idea, but I had a little bit of anxiety filming that moment.
It's interesting because there was sort of like a build-up because we had to be in the other room, and Linda Klein came in and she's like, "Oh, wait till you see what's out there." And I was like, "Oh God, I don't know." Oh, really? But there was, it's shooting this whole episode was sort of like an out-of-body experience, because I'll never forget when Michelle Obama did one of her speeches, one of her many, but this was like an amazing speech, and she sort of was like, and I'm bastardizing it because she did it so much more eloquently, but she kind of was like, we don't have to live this way anymore. Like, we don't have to take this anymore. And it was such a like, oh, we don't. You know what I mean? And so then also simultaneously to be shooting this episode where, I feel like when I was like younger, like in high school, it was like, and then coming out of acting school, it was like sort of everyone, like women, I don't know, it felt like a very like women pitted against women, right? And I feel like we're entering in this, God, I'm like clutching onto my mic like this. Okay, I can relax a little bit.
We have a lot of intense feelings around here.
I feel like
Shots.
it's such an incredible, we're like entering into a new age of women supporting women. So actually filming that moment to me felt very much of like echoing what I'm feeling like is happening
in the kind of the outside world. Like sometimes you shoot stuff and it's like make believe. But then when you're shooting something that is so current to what's happening to your experience kind of on the outside world, I remember like pushing the gurney, like I felt like I was in like slow motion, and I was like taking in all of these eyes and these faces, and it was just a surreal, incredible experience of like woman supporting woman like I've never felt. And I think the whole episode was like that because there were so many women, and don't get me wrong, I love men, I've loved working with men, but this was a unique experience because most of my life has always been 99% men, director, first AD, all the other actor, and this experience was 99.9% women. So that to me, walking down with all of these women, it was really hard the first couple takes because we were like tears were like, and then I think it was, there was talk about for us to not really show that emotion, but have some other thing going on in that moment. And so for me, it was really actually like a really just an amazing moment as a creator, as a woman, echoing very much what I feel like is happening in the outside world. So
Yeah, I also just want to add that so the actress Camilla that played Abby, we rounded the corner with a gurney and she got in, and I said, I bent down to her and I said, oh my God, this is amazing, right? And she turned to me and she said, I'm not gonna look until we start shooting. So her reaction that you see on camera is the first time that she does really see the women. And it was a very emotional filming it that day. And so that's a genuine reaction to her seeing it for the first time.
Just incredible.
Yeah.
I can't. I've seen this 3 times. I cry every single time. In a larger sense, there was one scene too that stood out for me, and it's when Teddy almost kind of reprimands you, or Joe at least thinks that she's going to reprimand her for breaking protocol, but then she does something different. Said it should be protocol. Can you guys talk about the importance of that, and Elisabeth, if you talk about why that's so important to
There
include
was
that
a scene that was cut, right, with Alex telling Bailey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there used to be where Alex was advocating for as his last move as chief was to like spend all the money that he had left in the budget,
Like $1.
and and
Love him.
she was gonna get mad and say, "Come on, have you learned nothing?" And he's like, "No, I put it in the right hands." And then there was just felt something, it didn't feel quite right, and having Teddy say that and have her witness that. It's also the one scene where we talk about men being survivors of assault, and in particular, which was really important to us, and especially in the services in armed forces. That's an even bigger problem, but. That scene takes my breath away every time. Because it's just the two of you connecting over this. Yeah.
Making a change.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think that's another thing about this is that I think feeling like the idea of believing women, right, and being heard and making a change, and Teddy talking to Joe, like. It's that thing of being brave enough to step out of protocol to make change. So I think for me, that's why it seems also so important because, God, we fucking need to make changes, right? And so that's I guess that little thing of like, okay, here we go. Let's make things protocol that should be protocol.
Yeah. And Camilla, Joe also in this episode reveals for the first time that she had an abortion when she was married to her abusive husband at the time.
Yeah.
How did you prepare for this episode and that scene that specifically? I mean, every scene in this episode is just so powerful. What was your prep like?
That's hard because first off, just an interesting thing about that scene that I've never experienced before is that that scene with my mom was shot as one full scene. It was 14 pages long, and every take was about 30 minutes.
Sorry.
I never want to work with her again, obviously. We're done. No, it was, and so it was grueling that day. Also, I just happened to have acute bronchitis that entire
She
episode.
was so sick that entire
the
episode,
entire
and
shoot.
you like was such a trooper.
So many injections in my butt that Kim witnessed.
I was like, I think I'll take a vitamin
Yeah,
B
you
shot
did.
too, and a
And there's
vitamin
one
C,
point we were like
because
bent
we're
over
literally,
together.
like breathing like onto each other, and I was like, maybe I need some vitamins. I'm leaning over and getting.
It was
So
not
that
pretty.
day, I basically had no voice, and I was stressing out. And Kim actually like talked me off the ledge that morning. The only way I could.
Maybe I shouldn't do this scene. I was like,
I'm not going to do this today.
It's like,
Kim's
that's
like,
not an
you're here
option.
and you're working. The way I personally prepped for that scene is I went into it and I wrote all of Joe's hopes for how it would go, and her expectations for how it would go badly, because I think that obviously there would be a part of her that would assume that it's possible it would go wrong. And so to carry all of that into a scene, and then it just gets flipped on its head, and Michelle Forbes is just amazing to work off of, and then all of her expectations gets thrown out the window in a horrible way. And it really is like, not to sound very actory, but it just came down to like listening and responding. In that moment, we were just working off each other, and that scene is even longer actually than it is being shown. We cut.
Yeah, the cut came in at 9 minutes over.
It would have just been an hour show of us talking.
They usually are like
the DVD, please,
the-
right?
there's usually like 3 to 5 like cuts come in like 3 to 5 minutes, and you have to like nip and tuck and do whatever you can do. 19 minutes over.
Yeah, it was a long episode over.
Yeah. So we had to lose some things.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost out of time, but we do want to get to some audience questions. So there'll be a mic, I think, being passed around. Any questions? Right here, down in front. Second row. Be loud.
Yeah.
So the question was casting Kalila and Michelle in this episode.
Kalila, which this amazes me, is she had come in to audition for Grey's, I think 4 or 5 times for other roles, and Krista and the directors had all said like, she's great, but we should save her for something else. She's really great. We should save her for something bigger, something more, something. And when this came out, it was like, oh, that's who it is, and that's who it is. Which it was made for her. And so she got the offer.
No audition.
No audition, because she had done plenty of auditions for us prior that she did that. And then Michelle Forbes, I knew from working on True Blood in the first couple seasons, and she's an extraordinary human being. And when I thought of her, it kind of clicked into place, and we were so lucky to have her.
We have another question. Right here in front.
Yeah, Jersey.
So the question was, how did you guys process after you filmed this episode?
I don't know if I have really. I'm gonna be honest, because Joe's journey, for those of you who have finished the season, this is the beginning of a really dark place for Joe. And I remember coming to work and saying to Justin, like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. I was like so depressed. It was hard not to bring it home. Finchy and I would text sometimes, and it would just, lots of wine obviously helped me in the evenings. No, it was really hard. It was really hard to let go of this, and I haven't really, because Joe is in treatment, and I don't know what that looks like next season for her. I don't know what's in store for her. I would like to see her, come out of it the other side.
Hint, hint.
I would really like Joe and Alex.
I would really like to write a comedy.
I would really like babies. No, I don't know what that looks like for her. So I feel like I'm kind of like in this weird limbo space a little bit, living with it through hiatus, because it's not done to me.
But that's also the strength of this show is, when you're on for 15 seasons and you've got fans all over the globe, and your
We have
ABC's
fans? Just kidding. We love you, by the way. Thank you for coming here.
But the show has an incredible reach, and it's still, in its 15 seasons, ABC's #1 drama. And season 15, that's so rare for a veteran show. And to have that kind of a reach and to explore these kind of serious and impactful topics, I mean, what kind of response have you guys heard to this episode?
An enormous response. I mean, I mean, just from, I think again, it goes to people just feeling heard. You know, like their stories. You know, their stories of just again believing and hearing. I mean, I think that's also such an interesting theme going on through this. You know, when she talks about her husband, you know, that she's broken and that her husband will think that she brought it on, and also the opening. It's so beautifully written and so performed. Of, you know, no one will believe me. I drank too much tequila. I feel like people come up to me and they're like, I feel heard. Yeah. So I think that's, you know, that. You know, and also I think people coming up, just, it's so interesting the reach of this show, that it's, you know, that it's so many, I mean, I have people who are in their 50s coming up to me, and I have, you know, 15-year-olds coming up to me, and that is really rare, and it's really incredible.
Yeah. We have another question from the audience. Back here in the green, I think. So the question was the guidance that you guys got back from Rain.
It was I mean, we weren't necessarily, I mean, what I will say is, Krista, our showrunner, and our writers, I mean, adamant. I mean, I remember there was one line that I was sort of, I mean, you know, you try to be word perfect, but then sometimes when you're on a series, sometimes it's close to and it's fine, but there was some particular, like, language that we absolutely, and we as actors also really wanted to adhere to them. Sometimes if, like, you're on another show and a script supervisor comes to you and you're like, and you've got and you're like, Urgh. You know, like, really? It's just like, but on this, like, we wanted, because the wording of what we were saying and how we were saying it is of the utmost importance. But I think, so that, I know that and I'll let you kind of, because, you know, it's very specific in the PSA, but we weren't trained.
We weren't trained, but when people do, I think the message to me for the episode is you're seen, you're heard, you're believed. And that to me is something that, because I have been approached about a sexual assault, and people approaching me about that, and also reaching out to their mother and it going wrong, or a parent and going wrong. So I've had, like, both fans kind of reach out to me. But that's what I say. I say, I hope you know that you are seen and heard and believed, because that's the only message I feel like I can give, because I wasn't trained to, like, speak to those people, but also to reach out and get help, you know.
But we're almost out of time here. Actually, we are out of time, but Pinchy, I want you to tell the story about the backstory behind the title of the episode, which is Silent All These Years.
It's after the Tori Amos song that from her album Little Earthquakes, which was a massively important record, you know, the music, the music with the headphones. It was a really powerful piece of art, that album, that song in particular. She was unapologetically rageful and emotional about her experience being sexually assaulted. I was in college and went to a concert and just thought it was amazing, and she was the original spokesperson for RAIN, that she took that on for that organization. And they were handing out bumper stickers at the end of it and magnets and whatever, and I just took one because I was like, okay, and I left. And shortly after, my roommate in college was raped. And she came to me and didn't know what to do. And I didn't know what to do, but I had that bumper sticker. So we called, and then they helped us find a place, and I could take her there and help her and be there for her. But that all connected, and I really wanted to honor that and honor the work that Tori Amos continues to do for survivors and RAIN, which has been a tremendous organization.
Well, that's actually all the time that we have. Thank you so much to Elisabeth Finch, Camilla Luddington, Kim Raver, ATX, all of you for coming out. Have a great festival.